welcome back to the F2 show. It's been a long winter break, but Formula 2 is back. The teams have had 3 days of winter testing and they're raring to go with the start of the season just around the corner. I'm your host, Fraser Ford, and joining me to discuss the test, we have Inside F2 writer Luke John Buckle, WTF1 writer Hannah Priffick, and F1 Feeder Series presenter Jim Kimberley. Okay, before we get started on testing then, should we see who's driving for who in 2022 in case anyone missed it? 2021 Formula 3 champion Dennis Hauger moves up to Formula 2 with Prema, whilst fellow Red Bull junior Jehan Jaruvula joins the Italian outfit. Promising young Aussie Jack Doohan joins UNI alongside Marino Sato, who stepped up the grid from Trident. Red Bull junior Liam Lawson and American hotshot Logan Sargent join Carlin in an all-new look-in lineup. High-Tech retain Yuri Vips and also bring in Kiwi Marcus Armstrong from Dams. And finally, ART will be hoping for a title push this season. They retain Teo Pourchaire, whilst Mercedes junior Frederick Vesti steps up to Formula 2. For those watching, you can see the lineups right in front of you. For those listening, go to our website, www.insidef2.com, to check out the full lineups. Okay, now we know who's driving for who. Let's take a look at each driver's best lap from testing. Liam Lawson posted the fastest time of the test in his Carlin with a 1:41.623, which was set on day 2. That was 4 tenths quicker than his closest rival, Jehan Jaruvula in Prema, who set his fastest time on day 1. Teo Pourchaire, Ralph Boschung and Logan Sargent rounded out the top 5, reinforcing Carlin's pace with Logan Sargent's 5th place. And again, you can check out all of those on our website, the full timings. As I mentioned then, the test was cut a little bit short due to the sandstorm in Bahrain. Yeah, you're right hearing that right, the sandstorm. You can see the photo on Enzo Fittipaldi's social media if you want to check that out. But obviously the afternoon session in day 3 wasn't quite as didn't take place at all, and a lot of drivers had soft tyres ready to go. So it's not quite the full run in. There's obviously a lot of variables in testing anyway. A great start for Carlin, but yeah, I'm sure they won't get too carried away, Hannah. I'm sure they'll be very mindful of the fact there wasn't any running in the afternoon on day 3.
They certainly will be, especially, at least fortunately for the likes of Liam Lawson, for example. He's already had a season in Formula 2, but especially for those drivers stepping up for the first time, or even those who got limited running like Logan Sargent at the back end of last year, losing that half a day of testing is going to put them on the bit of a back foot, I think, in terms of especially adapting to the cars. If you're a driver that does take longer, you are probably going to have a couple of teething issues, I would say, in the opening round in Bahrain. But for Lights Carlin, especially for Lawson, it is also nice to top the timing sheets in testing, but it doesn't really tell us much. We obviously don't know, kind of in terms of the fuel runs and things like that, whether some drivers were actually full on pushing it in their flying lap runs or whether some of them were holding back. I think the interesting thing was in that morning, in the afternoon session for Lawson, was 14 drivers were all within a second of the leading time from a series of teams. I think that hopefully shows that we should have a closely competitive field, especially early on, a mix of returning drivers and newer drivers as well. So I'm excited for the season ahead. I think it should be a good one. We've got a very competitive and strong field, and I'm not too sure yet who I'd put as a favourite for the title, given the performances in testing.
Yeah, it's a really strong grid, isn't it? Really strong grid. Now, yeah, definitely looking forward to see. You're right, there isn't a favourite. So we'll see how it goes. Obviously, as you said, Lawson, Jaruvula, Pourchaire looking strong, Boschung in there as well. Is there, are they the guys we're expecting to see at the front, Jim, in it come round 1, or do you think that some of the other guys, some guys we haven't mentioned, will be in there as well?
Yeah, we're looking at the reverse grid, which will make a difference, of course. The drivers that are retaining a seat or retaining their place in Formula 2 are going to be at the top. You'd expect that. But there's a lot. It's a strong grid, like you say, and the top 5 or so teams, maybe 6, are all in with a shout of victories, maybe not the title. So Hauger, I don't know if he's going to follow in Piastri's footsteps with showing up on the first round and being spectacular, but I think Vesti as well could be overlooked by some people. And then I think Carlin have probably got the strongest lineup out of all of the partnerships. So Lawson and Sargent. There's just a lot of F3 drivers who I think will come through. And a lot of people seem to overlook Vips, which has really surprised me. Vips and Drogovic. Drogovic going back to MP. But like I say, there's about 5 or 6 teams that are all looking really strong, and any of those could turn up in Bahrain, take the win on the feature race, and then be strong for the rest of the season. Prema always going to be strong, but I don't really think they're in as strong a position with their lineup this year as they were last year. I think last year and arguably the year before, depending on how much you appreciate Schwartzman, and I'm a big fan, I think they've had a stronger lineup recently. Hauger's very good, Deruvla's good, but I don't think they're going to run away with the title this year.
Yeah, really interesting, especially with the Premier lineup. You're right, it's obviously inexperienced. Saying that, they got a Formula 3 champion and had a Formula 3 champion last season. So yeah, we'll wait and see. Carlin lineup is definitely strong. Your boy Ralph Boschung, stunning new livery. Can he compete for wins this season?
You'd like to think so. Oh, I would like to think so, at least. The livery is amazing. I'm a big fan of memes as it is, so seeing memes on a car is always a dream. I think he could maybe go for victory. We didn't expect him seriously to be on the podium last year, I don't think, and I don't know how much progress Campos will make throughout the season. But it's Formula 2, so you've got 24 drivers who could be on the podium or taking a win, and I think Ralph's one of them. Certainly shown with the practice times that he's not lost any speed over the winter. Whether that incrementally changes for this year, that he's going to go one better and get third place or one better second or first, remains to be seen. But I think he's got his best chance so far in his career. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, fingers crossed for him, and fingers crossed for you, mate. Indeed, exactly. Carlin obviously always go well around Bahrain. Could their early testing form be just that they do go well around Bahrain, or do you think it could be pace for the season? What are you thinking, Jim?
I think Carlin have underperformed for the last season, and I don't. This is where I was talking about the Prema pairing. Actually, I think Tictum's strong, and I think we saw some of that strength. But I think Deruvla would be unhappy with how his season went last year, and was it Deruvla and Sonoda the year before did okay. I think this year the partnerships that they've got, the driver pairing is stronger. I don't think it's going to be a single race stuff. I think Carlin have that expertise to do well all year. I just hope that, I guess a lot of people do as well. Carlin are a bit of a fan favourite team. I just hope they can maintain it throughout the season if they do start well. I don't know if they'll be the team's champions by the end of the year, but I think they'll be challenging for those top 2, top 3 places.
Yeah, good stuff. Okay, so obviously one of the surprises of testing was Marino Sato in the UNI. Some perhaps maybe a little bit surprised that he got the UNI seat in the first place. Was he 7th overall in testing, a 10th off of his highly rated teammate Jack Doohan? Luke, good start for him. Surprised or?
Yeah, I was surprised. He was a bit unspectacular in the previous 2 years with Trident, but made the switch to UNI this year, and he's made a good start to the year in testing, P7 overall, and about half a second behind the leader. And he was headed for some esteemed company like Yuri Vips, so maybe this year could be a bit better for him. But it's his 3rd year now, and the pressure's really ramping up on him because you don't want to spend more than 2 or 3 years really in Formula 2. So he's really got to get it right this year. But yeah, it's been a good start for him, and hopefully he does well in Bahrain and the following rounds after that.
Yeah, big season for him. Let's talk about Dennis Hauger then. Obviously 6/10 off his teammate, Jehan Deruvla. Obviously, as we said, very unrepresentative at this point, given the luck of running on day 3. What does success look like for him in the first couple of rounds, Hannah? Obviously, is it to be within a couple of tenths of his teammate, or has Oscar Piastri, has he reset the standard in terms of rookies? Should he be aiming to beat Jehan Deruvla straight away in round 1?
I think from the get-go, Hauger's goal will be to absolutely outclass Deruvla. I don't think, given the amount of pressure that's going to be on him. We saw what Oscar Piastri did last year. It proves that rookie drivers can come in take the championship by storm. And I think given, especially as well being part of the Red Bull Junior team and the fact that he's one of 5 Red Bull Juniors in F2 this year, there's going to be a mountain of pressure on him to outclass his teammate thoroughly from the get-go. He needs to be consistently qualifying up the front. First couple of races, I wouldn't say I expect him to go and beat Deruvla, but if he does, it's only going to increase that confidence for him and get into grips with that car. So I would say, especially with having Prema, I expect them to be near the front. For Hauger, he's just going to want to come out there and not be on the back foot, because I think that's the one difficulty a lot of the newer drivers can have, is sometimes getting to grips with that car, being on the back foot at the start and then having to build momentum throughout the season. But if you can do, say, like Lawson did last year, enter the championship, winning the opening weekend and start off on that strong foot, it's going to destabilise Deruvla and put him in the worrying position of being outclassed by another teammate. And with a potential F1 seat on the line, they need to be performing from the get-go, because we don't know when seats will be announced.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure he'll be ready to go from the get-go. Enzo Fittipaldi, Luke. Obviously, big incident in Jeddah. Good to see him back.
Yeah, it was great to see him back, and hopefully, he has a good season this year. We might see his relative Pietro in Formula One this year with Haas. So there might be a bit of pressure on Enzo to follow in his footsteps, but hopefully, he has a good year because he seems a really good talent.
Yeah, definitely. Fingers crossed for him. And I wanted to talk a little bit about Chembolik Bassi as well, Jim. Obviously, his story's brilliant. I think you've got a lot of people wanting him to do well this year. Really solid start in testing. He was even in the top 3 in the morning session on day 2. What do you think his aims will be for the season?
I think he'll be realistic, and I don't know if he'll go in this year thinking a win will be possible, certainly with Chiru, with all due respect to Chiru. I think the fact he's going to be on the grid is what a success story that is. That's a bit of a fairy tale as it is. And I'm not a massive esports watcher, but the reason I like Ralph, it's that determination to get into a position to be on the cusp of Formula One without necessarily having the financial backing to be there. They've had to hustle to do it. And that's what I appreciate, is the hustling element. So we saw some of this if you watched Formula Regional Asia, that Chem was racing in that to get a bit of experience before the season started. And similar to Fittipaldi, huge crash on the start line, and that was his car gone. And from things I've heard, that the team just said it's going to cost too much money to repair it. And once again, money drives the sport. So I'm a fan already for the fact that this isn't some rich kid who just says, "Daddy, please buy me a new car so I can do some more racing." This guy's come up there with merit, with hustle, and getting on the grid should be great. For expectations, if he could break the top 10 by the end of the season, that would be amazing. But I think getting points, we've said how many times last year, consistency is key. I think getting points in every round, that would be terrific. If he gets on the podium, even better. And that will be heartwarming, headline grabbing story, I think, the esports driver who got an F2 podium. But yeah, maybe it's next year that they'll do it. I think it's a 2-year contract from some of the things I've heard. That it could be next year when he goes big. But this year, yeah, just get some experience halfway through the season, then start progressing and maybe getting those 3rd, 4th, 5th positions in the races. Strong start from the testing though.
He obviously has a lot of support from Turkey. They've been going crazy on Twitter. I'm sure you've all seen it. What is there a possibility to go to Formula One if he comes in and does well? Do you think that's something that he'll be looking at, or is it take a step at a time and Formula 2 is the priority for the time being?
It's a busy grid, isn't it? If there's no room for Oscar Piastri, is there going to be room for Chembolik Bassi? The market share will be interesting, like from a political standpoint, in terms of a team wanting to have the large Turkish market. That Chem would be a dream for that. And young people who follow esports, Chem's going to be a bit of a hero for those guys as well. Formula One next year, I think there's just too many drivers in the queue before him. Unless he just storms the championship and wins by 100 points, in which case everyone's going to take notice. But If that'll happen, it's unlikely. But he's the closest esports graduate that's going to get there. We'll see if it's going to be him.
Yeah, interesting. Let's wait and see. All right, then. So, as usual in Formula 3, we have some drivers who are linked with Formula 1 teams as part of their driver academies, which is brilliant for the sport and brilliant for some youngsters who need that extra little support, a little bit of a support to make it through their careers. Let's run you through which drivers are linked with which academy this year, because there has been a little bit of change. Luke, do you want to run us through?
Yeah, so Alpine, they've nabbed Jack Doohan from Red Bull. They've got Ollie Cornwell as well. Mercedes, they've got Danish driver Fred Vesti. Sauber, they've got Frenchman Théo Pourchaire. And Williams, they've got Logan Sargent and Israeli driver Roy Nissany. And Red Bull, as usual, they've got a plethora of drivers. They've got Yuri Vips, Formula 3 champion Dennis Alger, Liam Lawson, Jehan Daruvula, and Japanese driver Ayumu Iwasa.
Yeah, thanks, Luke. Really, really interesting this season. Obviously, a lot of drivers linked with a lot of academies, which is brilliant. We all love the Battle of the Academies. It's a real highlight of feeder series racing. 5 Red Bull juniors in Formula 2 this year, which is, it seems like loads, doesn't it? It's almost a quarter of the grid. Potentially an F1 seat up for grabs if Pierre Gasly moves on from AlphaTauri, as we expect. Have those 5 got a real opportunity to impress this season, Hannah?
I think of all probably the juniors on the grid this season, maybe except Théo Pourchaire, it's the Sauber. The Rebel juniors have to have one of the biggest opportunities, not only with the potential for Gasly to move on, but if Tsunoda underperforms this season, he's out. I cannot see. I'm too much surprised that Red Bull and AlphaTauri kept him for another year, given I'd say towards the back end of the season, there was a marked improvement, but Red Bull are known for not giving their drivers much time. And I think for them, they also have the advantage of something all of the juniors will benefit from is F1's latest rule that for at least 2 FP1 sessions, each team has to field a rookie driver. So a driver with less than 2 Grand Prix to their name. And I think Lawson's already been announced for AlphaTauri and Vip's already been announced for Red Bull for at least 1 session this season. So I think for them, we'll start to see, I think towards particularly the second half of the season, when there's kind of a lot of familiar tracks to the drivers, but maybe not on the F2 calendar, the potential ones that are being eyeing up for seats, because Piastri will get some running probably with Alpine. So whether any of the other juniors, they perform well, get some running and potentially eyeing up that F1 seat, because I think at this moment in time, I'd count on good money, probably at least 1 Red Bull junior is going up next season.
Is it a case of, a simple case of winner takes all, Jim, or will Helmut Marko be looking at more than that?
If any of those 5 win the title, then winner takes all. Will one of the 5 take the title? Maybe. I don't know if it's as simple as the top driver will take it. If you look at Hauger, albeit with a Prema, if Hauger outperforms, say, 3 of them, so just for example, if Daruvula finished second in the championship, Hauger finishes third, just hot on his heels, would you actually look at that and think Hauger maybe has more potential? He's just adapted to the car and is only a couple of points behind Daruvula by the end of the season. That's the sort of thing I think would be of a consideration, because Marco's no fool. I mean, say what you like about him, and a lot of people do. How many drivers are going to graduate from Formula 2 to, it doesn't have to be the Red Bull champion, Vettel and Verstappen are 2 of many drivers who've taken from Red Bull to get to Formula 1. They just have to get into Formula 1, get a bum in a seat. And Hannah's right, there's a good chance of any of these, from any of the academies, aside from the Sauber Academy, because I think Teo is going to get a seat no matter what he does this year. But out of Red Bull, they've got really good drivers this year. I think last year wasn't as strong. I don't know, it's mostly the same lineup, but I think Vips and Lawson going into this season, Daruvla are arguably the better drivers. They're going in as title contenders from the off, and that's going to be huge for them. So, like we saw, was it Bahrain last year when it was just the Alpine boys totally dominant? we could have a similar situation where it's an all Red Bull podium early this year, because Vips, Hauger, Lawson, Deruvula, Iwasa maybe behind that are all really strong drivers, and the seasoned F2 Red Bull Junior team drivers should all be sniffing at a seat for next year.
Yeah, I've seen a few complaints on Twitter actually about, we've got 4 Red Bull liveries on the grid this season. Vips hasn't taken a Red Bull livery. Obviously, Deruvula, Hauger at Prema, Lawson at Carlin, Iwasa at Dams. I think they tried to make it a little bit more identifiable by Hauger having the green on his front and rear wing, Liam Lawson having the Roding cars on the sponsorship down the side. Is that something that Formula 2 should be considering, though, Luke? The fact that, new fans coming in, could it be a little bit confusing?
Yeah, potentially. We have seen, even in Formula 1, we've seen special liveries, but in the past, we have seen many cars have Red Bull liveries, even at Uni Virtuosi. I think it was 2020 where we had Callum Ilott with red for Ferrari and Joe with yellow for Renault. But it can be a bit confusing, but I suppose it's just down to the sponsors and the marketing, and it's not that big of an issue, especially if drivers are in different teams. And a driver only spends a couple of years or maybe 3 years in F2 anyway, so it's not too big of a drama.
Jim, agree. It's they have tried to make it easily identifiable, haven't they, with a few different things. But yeah, it's obviously 3 different teams with the same livery, effectively.
Yeah, I think it's fine, personally. I think the commentators have it worse than we do, in all honesty. They're the ones who have to call it. The good thing is, and this is what, especially as we have this advent of a lot of the grid being in some sort of academy, the good thing is the teams, the F2 teams that is, are almost less relevant than the Formula One junior academies. And that's actually what's going to get new fans hooked in, is that, oh, I like Red Bull, I'm a Verstappen fan, I'm a Perez fan, I'll support some of these Red Bull drivers. So there's more drivers in those liveries on the grid, that's fine. And the cardinal rule is don't hit your teammate, but I don't think, speaking about Alma Marco, I don't think if Vips took Lawson out, Mr. Marco's going to be very happy with that either. So there's and they're not in the same team now. I think there's a lot of stories that work out in Formula 2 from this, and the academies are one of the big stories. How likely is it we're going to see a driver next year go into Formula 1 and not be part of an academy? I just don't see that being a thing now. You need to be part of academy to make the jump up. And if you've got a livery that looks like a Red Bull or looks like an Alpine on the car, and Williams, don't forget as well, if you look at their Formula 3 livery as well, it's identical. I can't remember if it's the same for, remind me, just look for the names, Sargent at Carlin. It's, yeah, these are things that are going to help people identify why I should follow this driver and not that driver. And if Red Bull have a bunch of drivers with similar liveries, I don't think it's that big a deal. It's, like I say, the commentator calling it early, that's the big deal.
Ferrari, no junior drivers part of Formula 2 this season. Obviously, they've got Mick Schumacher, they've got Antonio Giovinazzi, they've still got Callum Ilott on a piece of string as well, obviously in IndyCar this season. And Robert Schwartzman as well. Don't forget Robert Schwartzman. Does not having a driver in Formula 2, does that impact them in any way?
Under normal circumstances, I'd say yes, but given Ferrari seem to have bundles in reserve, like you mentioned with Callum Ilott heading over to IndyCar and Schwartzman, they're not going to be short of drivers able to step up to Formula 1 if needs be, or being able to field in the FP1 sections. It's obviously, I think it shows maybe gaps sometimes. You've kind of got two opposite situations, say with Red Bull, where they've got a bottleneck at F2, and Ferrari, where at the moment they have no one. But given the fact that they've got several juniors as well, like the likes of Arthur Leclerc in Formula 3, odds on he will probably be in Formula 2 next year. I don't think it's a bigger deal for this season, but long term, If it goes to say 2-3 seasons with having no juniors making up to F2, then they have got an issue with their progression. So I'd say this time around it's not too bad. And to be honest, I think the situation with Schwartzman, I think a lot of people suspected he may have returned, but obviously doesn't really need to at this point. So there could have been a Ferrari junior potentially in an F2 seat. But overall for this season, I'd say for Ferrari, they've got a lot of juniors already ready, in enough F1 seat. They probably don't need any more.
You'd argue there's an F1 seat that's up for grabs as well with the Ferrari linking at Haas right now. Maybe Schwartzman's going to jump in there.
Yeah, exactly.
And Jehan Daruvula also linked with that seat. Could you see that happening, Jim? I think it could well be the brother of someone we have in Formula 2 this season. So let's wait and see. Luke, obviously, as we've said, Alpine have nabbed Jack Doohan off of Red Bull over the winter. Big shoes to fill, given Oscar Piastri won the title last season as an Alpine junior. How do you think he'll do this season?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how he gets on. He did really well in Formula 3 last year. He pushed Dennis Hauger all the way for the championship. And even when he stepped in to Formula 2 last year in Jeddah and Yas Marina, he put in some really good performances, especially in Jeddah. I think it was the second sprint race where he finished pretty high up in the points. So if he can replicate that again this year, then he might maybe do some FP1s this year, although that will more likely be Piastri. But I think Alonso hasn't got that long left in Formula One, so there could be an opening for him in Formula One, maybe in the next couple of years. But see how he gets on. He did well last year, and I think he should do well again this year, especially as there's more tracks this year, and that was the thing that really hindered the championship, I think, for everyone last year, where we had such big gaps between the rounds. Having more of a flow to the championship should help him and all the other drivers too.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what Jack Doohan can do this year, especially given his qualifying performance in Abu Dhabi, which was pretty spectacular, wasn't it? So, yeah, he's definitely one to watch for this season. I'm going to bring the lineups back up again. Of these teams, who has the strongest lineup?
Carlin, easy for me.
Interesting. Okay, Hannah?
I'm going to go... probably agree with Jim on Carlin, but if Marcus Armstrong can perform the way he did in Formula 3, I'll say high tech.
And Luke?
There's so much talent, isn't there? I mean, there's Carlin, I think ART with Porsche and Fred Vesti. They've got a very strong lineup, so I think, yeah, I'll go ART.
It's really interesting because obviously Prema have had a very good lineup for the past couple of seasons, and yeah, no one said Prema, which is really interesting. It's going to be really interesting. Top 5 teams for me have really strong lineups, and it's a strong lineup on the grid, isn't it? So
don't forget MP as well. Drogovic and Novalak. Novalak isn't. A lot of people overlook him. He did really well last year. He's really strong, and Drogovic and MP is a force to be reckoned with.
He did do really well, and he seems to be absolutely loving life in Formula 2. He seems to be really relaxed and just living his best life, doesn't he? So definitely a team to watch for this season. Okay, that's all we have time for today. My thanks to Luke, to Hannah, and to Jim for joining us on today's show. And my thanks to you guys at home as well for watching us, or for joining us today. As always, if you enjoyed the show, please make sure you hit the like button. If you're new around here, make sure you subscribe to the channel. We've got lots of new content coming your way for the start of the season, including a pre-season F2 show special. So keep an eye out for that. Hashtag the F2 show if you have any questions ahead of the start of the new season. We'll try to answer as many questions as possible. But from me, Fraser Ford, and all of us here at Inside F2, we'll see you next time.